Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the United Service Institution Strategic Dialogues, your one-stop shop for national defense and geopolitics. Today, we will be focusing on the tenets of new generation warfare, and for as such, we have with us Lt Gen Rakesh Sharma, who holds the General Bipin Rawat Chair of Excellence at the United Service Institution and is researching on modern warfare. He is on the Governing Council of the USI, Executive Council of the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses, and is a distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. The General Officer commanded the Fire and Fury Corps in Ladakh and was the Adjutant General of the Indian Army. So, General Sharma,
firstly, thank you for inviting me, Vinay. It's a great pleasure being back in USA every time, and I'm honored.
You're welcome, sir. Sir, of late, we have been, there is in the media zeitgeist, on social media, everywhere, we've had a lot of talk about a new generation of warfare. So, could you please give us a primer on the concept?
Yeah, so, the fact is that the very definition of war and warfare is changing. We have historically considered war and warfare as what was written around in history by Clausewitz
200 years ago. And now when we fathom into the whole thing, it's not exactly has to be interstate. It is not necessarily violent. It can be with non-state actors. And as we things are pursuing nowadays, wars are fought. Wars are defined as anything which can you lose your national interest or you lose your geopolitical aims without even firing a shot. So if the Chinese can take over a whole lot of territory in the South China Sea without firing a shot, well, it's war. Or if the Chinese deny us patrolling rights into the Depsang Plateau without firing a shot, that's war. So the definition of war itself is changing. And there is where the point is that the line between what is peace and what is war has got blurred. So peace is war. I mean, the situation the way it is developing, even peace is war and war is war. And then the warfare of yesterday, which is like the warfare, trenches and all these, which were First World War, stands even today as it's been happening in Ukraine or what was happening in Azerbaijan and Armenia. And the urban warfare of past tense is continuing in Mosul or Fallujah or now in Gaza. So the gamut of warfare, the past warfare stands as past warfare, and there is a new generation warfare which comes up thanks to technologies and thanks to the various methods of prosecuting war. So I would say that the complete geometry of battle space has changed. And that geometry battle space is as much in peacetime as is in war, as we spoke about on force warfare. So when I say new generation warfare, I'll say peace is war. And then, of course, there is grey zone terminology which is around here. And then there is a conventional war as it takes place. The entire gamut of affair. And when you restrict yourself to new generation warfare, you come down to those issues about cyber warfare or electronic warfare or artificial intelligence or robotics or biotechnology or space warfare, which all get amalgamated into one battlefield environment. So there is, rightly stating, I would say, there is a singular battlefield or singular battle space that transits itself from peace through grey zone to war to warfare. And in peace, I'd also call coercion, whether it is military or economic, is also war. So, in my definition of new age warfare, it's the entire gamut from peace to force and force warfare that all amalgamates together.
Amazing. So, at the beginning, you mentioned that the capture of territories. You mentioned the Spratly Islands, which are claimed by Philippines. You mentioned Depsang. So, sir, one thing that comes to mind is that a lot of geopolitical commentators have mentioned that China has effectively defeated the United States without firing a single bullet. Would you say that this is also a part of form of new generation warfare?
So I do not know, see defeat. Firstly, I think we need today in modern generation, your generation also, than mine, you have to start defining what is victory, what is winning, what's defeat. And I think it's one of the most
terms to define today is victory. Because victory, past times were defined by changeover of territory, or capture of prisoners of war, or even a regime change in many ways, or destruction of wherewithal. But that
Basically limited to military loss
Yeah.
or defeat.
But here, it is when you are successful in pursuing your geopolitical aims, which your adversary doesn't like it, or whatever happens to the adversary is pretty true, then that becomes your victory. Or victory, I would define it as strategic advantage. When you have over an adversary taken some strategic advantage, and which is suits your national interest, that would be a victory. So to say that one nation has defeated another nation, impossible to say in present day generation. Can you say Russia has defeated Ukraine or vice versa, or Israel and Gaza, or see?
Not conclusively.
Yeah. See, I give you the best example here. On 19th of September 2023, 8-9 months ago, the Nagorno-Karabakh has been an issue for last century and a half.
Yes.
On one day, within 24 hours, without firing the shot, the Azerbaijanis captured the entire Nagorno-Karabakh area.
Yes.
And Armenians withdraw, and the entire lot of public withdraw. I mean, about 100,000 people, Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh, went across to Armenia. So I would say that is a kind of victory,
Yes, sir.
though it was a problematic territory. So I don't know whether you can say the Chinese have defeated Americans or vice versa. That's not true. There is a inherent issue between these two great powers in which they are contesting in large manner.
Yes,
I would put it the other way around. Other than contestation, they are also in a very big way cooperating. Even today,
Yes, sir.
the amount of cooperation and amount of trade and amount of interaction which the Chinese have with the United States is not it doesn't look as if they are at war or something. There are 70,000 odd American businesses which are even today in China.
Yes, sir.
And Chinese have purchased 300,000 acres of land in the United States which they are tilling for purpose of agriculture. Where is the war? Who's winning?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I think we need to broaden our horizons to say that the past tense about war, warfare, winning, losing, all has been brushed aside.
Yes,
There is
sir.
new age thinking.
So you've given us an idea for the global stage. Now, sir, as far as India is concerned, you being an ex-army officer, so what do you, how do you see the future adversary? How do you see the adversaries which the Indian Armed Forces are going to have to face, and how their reactions are going to be?
So, good question.
Now, are we at war today with any one of our adversaries?
You would say no, we are not,
Not
at
in
war.
the traditional sense.
Yeah,
no.
we are not at war. But in many ways, the adversaries are making life, stretching us. And if we see the Chinese, they are stretching us by doing what they are doing on eastern Ladakh and rest of the areas and northern borders. And the Pakistanis are pushing in terrorists and weaponry, which is causing, problems in the areas, say, for example, around Jammu. While traditionally this is not war, but in many ways this is a war. So what I would say, to answer your question shortly, that we have a very serious border management and internal security posture, which is not considered as war traditionally. And the border management force, 4,000 kilometers of territory on the northern borders, where you are now occupying the areas right at the end of the line, I would say, close to the hump. Why? Because there is a distrust. Because the Chinese have proven that they cannot be trusted, and if you leave an area vacant, they'll come and occupy and create a little buffer zone, deny you patrolling across to areas you're doing, and it becomes kind of a fait accompli. So you have to say, we are deployed fully, and then we are also waiting for the Chinese to see what Chinese are doing, infrastructure they are building, the forces that they're putting across there, and all this creates a kind of threat which exists. So we also have to have reserves located close by, duly acclimatized reserves on the northern borders which are fixated. So if you say that there was a line of actual control, the line of actual control is as hot as it can be.
Yes,
It's except that there's no shooting war. We are just prepared for it. It's the kind of distrust that develops here.
Would it be correct to call it somewhat of a cold war at the border?
So I do not.
Everyone knows that one misstep is going to cause some harm.
So I do not know. Cold War, you go back to the Americans and the Russians, USSR, the Cold War, they fought. Terminologies tend to create
Yes.
confusion. So I'll leave the cold part of it,
Okay.
except that it's very cold there. The altitude areas is so very cold. But that cold apart, the fact is that there is a tense environment existing on the line of actual control, and we accept it. You come to the other side, the line of control, the 700-800 kilometers up to from Sangam to the other end of Siachen Glacier, where you are holding the entire line as close to the line of control as possible, and physically holding it, because there is always a threat of the Pakistanis doing some treacherous act of occupying some areas which are unheld, like they did in Kargil.
Yes, sir.
And then also pushing in terrorists which have caused problem in the hinterland in J&K, which they are doing it now.
Yes, sir.
So, to ask me, first is a border management strategy. A border is hot. I will not say cold, it is hot all along the areas, and we have to be prepared for it by holding it physically as far as forward as possible, as also denying infiltration and creating reserve and placing reserve on them. That's one part of the story. Second part of the story is that there is a hinterland issue in Jammu and Kashmir, which is also your task, which is another, though there is a transformation that has occurred in the valley per se, but there are no guarantees. Not that there is all peace across there and you can withdraw forces from the valley. No, you can't do that, because the situation can degenerate also.
Yes, sir.
And then there are issues coming up in the Jammu belt. So there is an hinterland issue here. So that's one part of a present day peacetime, and I will not call it grey zone, because grey zone confuses issues as to, is it peace or war? But I'll say that there is a hot border posture and internal security posture that we are occupying. And then other part is that in case there is escalation, like you said rightly,
Yes, sir.
always possible, it's always possible somebody escalates for any one reason, deliberately, inadvertently, by mistake. Then you have to be prepared for a whole hog force on force. And then force on force war means that you have to have the kind of wherewithal and the modernity of warfare, which says cyber and space and electronic spectrum, and you name the entire lot of gamut of affairs. So, in all its domains of warfare, as we say, multi-domains, and Army, Navy, Air Force, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, and space, all its domains, you have to be prepared for war, and in all its dimensions, and dimensions say physical dimension, which is man to man. Then there is a cognitive dimension, because wars are fought in brain also, targeting, like electoral manipulation, and then there is informational war. So there are many domains and many dimensions. So you have to prepare for all domains and all dimensions of warfare in case the war escalates to that level.
Yes. So you mentioned that right now the armed forces, the army is right next to the border, and they're manning almost the entirety of it.
Yeah.
So now you being the expert, I would now, to a layman like me, I don't think that is something which is sustainable over a longer period of time. Of course, you're going to have fatigue of the forces who are deployed at the border. So, would you say that there is a long-term solution to the tense situation at the border in the Indian context?
It's a brilliant question, but the fact is that there are no answers to this. And you can put your head into the noose and say, okay, it is non-sustainable.
Yes,
But
sir.
then there is no option to this. The question is that a transformative force like ours has to be prepared for a qualitative change, which comes up because of New Age warfare.
Yes, sir.
And we have to retain a quantitative edge, because a quantitative edge is required in a kind of terrain that you are holding,
Yes, sir.
and the kind of disputed borders that you have. So the balance between qualitative change and quantitative change are very essential to be handled together.
Yes.
Now, to say that we can be, we need to ease out and it's sustainable. Look, in the Chinese alone, after 2020, when Chinese came in here,
Yes, sir.
we've had 21 rounds of core commander level talks, which is the highest level talks that we ever held earlier.
Yes, sir.
And we've held 15 WNCC meeting in diplomatic level in Beijing and Delhi at the joint safety level. And then there have been large number of meetings between the political entities, which is the External Affairs Minister and Mr. Wang Yi from the Chinese. So at all levels, these discussions have taken place. And after having discussion taken place, there has been no reproach. Chinese are saying this is normal border management and control. We are saying that the situation is abnormal because you are denying us patrolling to areas where we used to patrol earlier,
Yes,
which we deemed as ours. So the fact of the matter is that we are now stuck in a cusp where you cannot withdraw back till the time there is a genuine. And since Chinese are now calling it this is normal and we calling it abnormal, this is a situation that's going to remain for a long time.
All right, sir. So would it be right to characterize it as a game of who blinks first in terms of the armies at the border?
So again, who blinks first? Nobody will going to blink. It is a situation which we are going to live with this. How would you say that it is my sovereign territory? What does President Xi Jinping keep saying to his people? Not an inch left by my forefathers we will leave.
Yes.
We will hold on to
Five
that.
fingers.
5 fingers is separate. 5 fingers also, yes. But he says, not an inch left by my forefathers will be leave.
Yes.
And he says, dare to win, fight to win. This is the terminology he's using every day to PLA. He's not going to blink. What will his public, see, there is a social contract between the Chinese people and the Communist Party of China.
Yes, sir.
The Communist Party has to retain itself into primacy. And the people are people. No? So people have to be assuaged. Now, people are going to ask, yeah, look, you went across there and you sat on the border and withdrew back. Why did you go there and you come back? And when you went there, you said, we have come to what we deem it 1959 line.
Yes, sir.
And now you come back from 1959 line. Why have you done this? So, I will not presume that the Chinese are going to blink. They feel, my personal opinion is, the Chinese have come to an area which is kind of a watershed on Eastern Ladakh, and they are prodding in other areas of the northern borders. So it is going to be like this. And for us, it is sovereign territory. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
It's not an issue of dispute, territorial dispute. It's a question of our sovereign territory left to us by our forefathers,
Yes.
and we have to defend it. So it's a situation. The only progress is give and take. And give and take are larger issues which happen over decades and over a very long time. And I don't foresee it in my time seeing a movement forward on this one, at least in the near future. Maybe over time it has to raise that political level and things might change. But presently, I think this is where we're going to remain.
So no end state.
End state is another English language. So you start talking about end state, you go back to the political end state and political end state and political end game, and then translate it into what's the end state. Present end state is that we have to defend the areas that we are holding, and the Chinese are also holding it in adequate numbers, more than adequate numbers across there, violating all the agreements that we had signed over a period of 20 years between Chinese and us. So that's the way it is, and that's the way I think in future. So again, to answer you, for Indian Armed Forces, we have to take this distrust seriously, and this was treacherous activity, expansionism done by the Chinese in 2020, and we can't have a faith and reliance on what will happen tomorrow. So you have to be prepared for it.
So, sir, you've spoken at length about the situation with China. You've given us a very good setting of the stage, so to say, of new generation warfare. Considering all of those things, how do you think the Indian Armed Forces, and because now whole of nation approach is a huge deal, so how does India prepare itself for any future conflict?
So this is the question. This is the question. This is the answer that we need to seek. And it is so broad-based, it's so broad-based that you can't imagine. Now, firstly, we have to prepare ourselves for a warfare of the modern kind, which includes protecting ourselves from, say, cyber or space warfare, even in peacetime, where all these things are possible. And, when we said, it was stated that 40,000 odd cyber attacks took place in 1 year against India. Many are not attributable, but you know that they are coming from which direction. So the fact is that we have to, in peacetime, prepare for the threats which are modern in nature, and for which there is also non-attributability. So when we say that the lines of peace and war are blurred, we have to start thinking of this kind of war. And in many of these issues, in technology specifically, the Chinese have taken a march. They are ahead of us substantially. So we have to now catch up. And we don't have to catch up with the Chinese on everything that the Chinese have achieved. We just have to say, where can we protect ourselves, and where is it possible for us to give back to Chinese in a measure of our own kind. It doesn't have to be quid pro quo. It doesn't have to be same domain. It can be cross domain. So, we have to prepare ourselves for a kind of response which transcends beyond the traditional. And it's not Chinese alone, it's Pakistan also. Yes. So we have to see whether we are able to deter or not. Deterrence itself is an issue which needs debate separately. Yes. But we need to be prepared for a peacetime type of thing to know what's happening. If somebody is targeting India by India's cohesion, by information warfare, and causing internal trouble, this is all problem. We have to now get on top of this, because this is also national. Yes, sir. It's a geopolitical ambitions. It's the socio-economic fabric of the country which is being targeted in peacetime that needs to be addressed. So we have to get on top of it. And then it comes to this issue of force-on-4 wars that can take place against the Chinese or thing. As it stands, it doesn't look as any one of these nations, India, China, or Pakistan, wants a war. It doesn't look it. But like I said, these intent can change. Intent changes on capabilities, and a nation which acquires the kind of power that Chinese have acquired over a period of time, there is always a propensity to use it. It comes that way. So you need to be prepared for it. Now, we have to prepare for a war in which Chinese will think that the geometry of battlefield, when they say system confrontation or system destruction, they will talk about targeting areas in depth before they come to the border areas. And the whole concept of warfare that they are enunciating is changing. We have to give back an equal coin, an equal measure. So it has to be in a manner that, and it has to be demonstrated, it has to be also followed by a national will to prosecute a war of this kind, which need not only be a border war. Yes, it would be a war fought into, say, the maritime frontier. It is fought by the standoff weaponry, precision weapon systems, which are as effective and as devastating as the adversary can push against us. We don't have to respond to the Chinese. See, and end by this saying that great powers have been fighting wars in the last 70 years, so many places. Yes, sir. None of these places the great powers have been able to show great victory. The Americans against Vietnamese, yes, sir. The USSR against Afghanistan, the Americans against Afghanistan. Yes, sir. They are all great powers fighting, or even Americans against Iraq. They're still stuck inside. Yes. When they said 2005 war is finished, okay, the victory, but there's still people, the issues in Afghanistan. Sir. So the fact is, it's the view chuck, yes, that we have to make, to put it like this. We have to create an environment in which our response is firm, forceful, effective, and visible there. And then there is a national will to execute it. There we have to quantify it. This is not the place for me to say how we can do it. Yes, sir. But believe me, there is much we can do.
Yes, so one final thing. Beginning, the beginning you said that the answer to this question of how we prepare for the future is very broad-based. So, will it be right for me to assume that there is no static answer to this?
Look, the issue is that there can be silos into this.
Okay.
The armed forces is one. I mean, let's push it one silo. But then there are agencies in India which are doing fantastic work outside the realm, which are also advantageous to defense of the national realm, which comes to, for example, say ISRO for that matter, or NPRO for that matter, or the NSCS, what work is being done by the National Security Council Secretariat. And there are many other agencies, and we have the technological capacities that need to be harnessed. There are drones being built in civil sector. So when people say a whole of government and now we say whole of nation, there is a whole of nation. So the simple answer is that the future war, when it is prosecuted, it's not going to be the armed forces alone. It will go across. Somebody will target our power sector. Yeah, our power sector has been targeted earlier. Somebody, they may target the banking sector or many other issues which can be attacked by, say, cyber and other methodologies. So we got to be prepared for actually a gamut of war, total war. Parade doesn't take place. We in men in uniform, understand what wars is and what kind of devastation. And India is in a growth path. So to end by saying, there is a Viksit Bharat, which is the aim of India.
Yes.
And in timelines.
Yes.
But for Viksit Bharat, it's a necessity to have a Surakshit Bharat.
Yes.
Without a Surakshit Bharat, you can't have a Viksit Bharat. If they are balance each other.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. You've given us a lot of insightful knowledge today, and I think you've unlocked a lot of dimensions to think along lines for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinayak, for inviting me.
You're welcome, sir.